I never planned to stay in Thailand. It was supposed to be a 2-week break from my divorce papers and my cold apartment in Chicago. I wasn't looking for anything, certainly not love. But something about her eyes. The way she handed me that bowl of noodles like it meant something. No smile, no small talk, just quiet care. I thought I knew better. I'd read the forums, heard the warnings from guys who came back broke and broken. They'll take your money, your pride, your soul. I told myself I was just being friendly, just enjoying the food. But every day I went back. I didn't know it then, but I was chasing something I couldn't name. Warmth, maybe? Or just a reason to keep waking up. I swear to God, she didn't take anything. She gave me everything I didn't know I still wanted. Love isn't always loud. Sometimes it's just sitting beside you when you feel worthless. I'm not telling this story because it ended in betrayal. I'm telling it because, for once, it didn't. I hadn't planned on Chiang Mai. It was just where the flight was cheap and the hotel didn't ask questions. I'd slept maybe 4 hours over 2 nights, but I wasn't tired. I was hollow. My divorce papers were signed the day before I left Chicago. 18 years gone in 10 minutes at the lawyer's table. I stepped out of my hotel into the thick Thai heat and wandered for what felt like hours, dodging scooters, blinking at signs I couldn't read. I turned down a narrow alley lined with plants and rusty chairs, and that's when I smelled the broth. She didn't speak, just nodded at an empty stool. I sat. She ladled soup into a chipped bowl and slid it in front of me. I didn't know what it was. Didn't care. It was hot and salty and real. When I looked up, she was already turned away, cleaning bowls. The next day I went back. I didn't know why. I told myself it was the soup, but it wasn't. She didn't flirt, didn't try to charm me, just served me again, same nod, same bowl. "Aroy mai?" she asked. I guessed it meant good. "Very," I said. She smiled, just a little. It felt like something cracked open in my chest. "What's your name?" I asked. She wiped her hands on a cloth. "Nok," she said, "like bird." I came back the next day, then the next. Sometimes we didn't speak at all. Other days, she'd try teaching me a word or two. I butchered every one. "Not cow." She'd laugh, "Cow." And I'd say, "That's what I said." And she'd roll her eyes and laugh again. I realized I hadn't heard laughter like that in years, not since long before the divorce, not even from my wife when things were good. One night, after I offered to help carry vegetables from the market, I asked her why she kept letting me come back. "You eat slow," she said. "Most farang eat fast, talk loud." I smiled. "Well, I'm not most farang." She nodded once. "I know." I wanted to ask more. If she'd been married, if she'd been hurt, if she thought I was just another white guy passing through. But I didn't. I just kept showing up, and every day she kept handing me that bowl like it meant something. I didn't understand it, but I knew I didn't want to leave. Not yet. Not while her smile still felt like the first real thing in months. I kept telling myself I'd leave tomorrow. Then tomorrow turned into next week. I kept extending my stay, booking night by night, as if I needed to trick myself into believing it wasn't serious. But I kept going back to that alley, to her stall, to the same plastic stool. She started letting me carry the vegetables from the morning market. One morning I said heavy, and she corrected me gently. "Knock." She made me repeat it 3 times. I got it wrong all 3. "You say knock, but you look like knock," she laughed. "What does knock mean?" I asked. She grinned. "Bird." I didn't get the joke, but I laughed anyway. One day, a young guy sitting near the cart shouted, "Farang tam jai!" Knock rolled her eyes and waved him off. "What did he say?" I asked. She sighed. "He say, you do love plan." I looked down at my soup, unsure if I should be embarrassed. "Is that bad?" She shrugged. "Not bad, just joke." I looked around, same street, same cracked walls, same smells. But something about her standing behind that cart made it all feel new every day. That night, after we closed up, I said, Do you want to sit? She hesitated, then nodded. We sat on the curb, watching scooters hum past. Do you ever leave this alley? I asked. Sometimes, she said, but not much. I rubbed the back of my neck. You know I didn't plan to stay this long. She glanced at me. I know. I looked at her hands, rough from washing and cutting and lifting. I don't really know why I'm still here. She turned, face half in shadow. Then why are you still here? I opened my mouth, but nothing came out at first. I swallowed. Because this feels more like home than home ever did. She didn't say anything, just looked at me, then down at the street. The silence wasn't cold. It felt like something between us needed to sit there a while. I wanted to reach for her hand, but didn't. Maybe I was afraid she'd pull away, or maybe I knew I wasn't ready yet. I wasn't sure if she was either. But we stayed there a long time, quiet, and for once, I didn't feel like a visitor. One afternoon, we were walking back from the market with bags full of vegetables, and I don't know what came over me, but I reached out and tried to take her hand. It was a soft gesture, nothing forceful, just instinct. Her fingers brushed mine, then slipped away, not angry, not cold, just careful. I looked straight ahead and muttered, "Sorry, I didn't mean to." She shook her head and said, "Thai women don't rush love like Western people." I nodded slowly, feeling foolish. "Yeah, I guess we do move fast." She didn't respond right away. We kept walking. The sun was behind us, long shadows stretching across the cracked pavement. Then she said, "Western men, they like fast start, big words, big plan. Thai women like slow, care first." I wanted to say something to defend myself, to say I wasn't like that. But the truth was I didn't know what I was like anymore. I'd rushed plenty before. I'd said things I didn't mean, just to avoid feeling alone. I stayed quiet. She looked down at the ground as we walked. "One farang, before you. He come every day. He say I beautiful. Say he love me. Say he marry me. Then one day he stop, no message, no goodbye." My throat tightened. "You never heard from him again?" She shook her head once. "Gone." I whispered, "I'm sorry." She shrugged like it was nothing, but her voice cracked just a little when she said, "I not angry, just now I careful." I looked at her face, and something in me pulled back. I didn't want to be another wound. I didn't want to make promises I couldn't keep. I wanted to tell her I was different, but even if I was, words wouldn't prove it. Time. "I'm not going anywhere," I said softly. "I'll be here tomorrow and the day after." She glanced at me. "Tomorrow is okay, but one day, maybe you also go." I nodded. "Maybe, but not yet." She didn't reply, just walked beside me, close enough that our arms almost touched. After that day, I didn't try to touch her again. I still came to her stall every morning, still helped her carry water buckets, still listened when she explained Thai words I couldn't pronounce. I'd say, "Jin cow," and she'd laugh. "You say eat rice, but you sound like baby." I didn't care. Her laugh was worth it. That laugh made the whole street feel warmer. One evening, I noticed the wooden shelf behind her cart was tilting badly. "That's going to fall," I said. She glanced at it. "I know, but no time." I asked, "You have tools?" She looked skeptical. "You fix?" I gave her a smile. "Let me try." She brought me a rusty box with 2 bent nails, 1 crooked screwdriver, and a hammer that looked like it had survived a war. I crouched beside the shelf and tried my best. It wasn't pretty, but it held. When I stood up, wiping my hands on my shorts, she stepped beside me. "Good job," she said. "It won't fall now." I nodded. "Hope not. But if it does, I'll fix it again." She looked at my hands for a moment, then reached out and lightly touched my fingers. Just 2 seconds. Just enough. Then she stepped away like nothing had happened. But I felt it. She didn't need big words. She needed time. She needed to believe I'd still be here tomorrow, and I would be. I hadn't talked to my poker group in a while, But one lazy afternoon I sent them a photo of Knock's noodle stall. Just something casual. Her behind the cart, me holding a bowl, both of us smiling. I figured they'd be surprised, maybe ask questions. Instead, within minutes, Darren sent back a string of laughing emojis and a meme of a man handing over a wallet. Then Rick chimed in. "You're being played, man. Wake up. She's got 10 of you." I stared at the screen longer than I should have. I tried to laugh it off, but something in me twisted. I didn't reply. I didn't even open the group again that day. That night, while Nok was prepping vegetables, I sat down and asked, "Do you want to see what my friend said about you?" She looked up, curious. I handed her my phone. She scrolled through the messages, her face still. When she finished, she set the phone down. "It's okay," she said. "People don't understand." I said, "They think I'm just another farang getting scammed." She looked me in the eyes. "Do you think that?" I shook my head. "No, I don't." She nodded once. "Then not matter." I wanted to believe it was that simple, that what I felt inside was stronger than the voices outside. Still, a part of me kept repeating their words in the back of my mind like a warning. But when I looked at Nok, sweating over boiling broth, arms sore from carrying crates, never once asking for a thing, I couldn't find any part of me that believed she was faking this. "You never ask me for money," I said. "You never complain. You never push me to stay." She glanced sideways and smiled. "If I want you here, I not need to push." I leaned forward, resting my elbows on the counter. "I just want you to know, I see you. I see how hard you work. I'm not stupid." Her voice softened. "You are not stupid. You are just kind." That hit me. Not sweet, not rich, not handsome. Kind. I'd never heard that from my ex-wife, not once. I watched Nok stir the broth and hand a bowl to an old man who always came at the same time each evening. I didn't feel like a fool. I felt lucky. When Nok asked if I wanted to meet her mother, my heart thudded like a damn drum. I asked, "Are you sure?" And she just nodded and said, "She wants to see your face." That morning I shaved, ironed my best collared shirt, and bought a small bouquet of yellow marigolds, even though I wasn't sure if flowers were the right thing. Nok laughed when she saw me holding them. "You look like student go meet teacher," she said. "I feel like one," I muttered. The drive was long and quiet, the city fading into rice fields and barking dogs. Her mother's house sat at the edge of a small village, tin roof, chickens in the yard, a soft breeze moving the curtains. When she opened the door, I bowed slightly and handed her the flowers. She smiled, but didn't take them. Nok said something in Thai, and her mother chuckled before finally reaching for the bouquet. We sat on straw mats around a low table. I tried not to stare, but her mother watched me like I was a riddle she was trying to solve. During dinner, I barely spoke, just nodded and smiled while Nok translated. At one point, her mother said something, and Nok looked at me. She says, "You have sad eyes, like someone who has lost something." I felt my throat tighten. "She's not wrong," I said. Nok leaned in and translated. Her mother reached out and gently patted my hand. That touch, so simple, so human. It nearly undid me. After dinner, Nok led me to her childhood room. It was small, clean, with faded posters on the wall and an old fan in the corner. We sat on the edge of the bed. She looked at me for a long time before saying, "I think you not like the others." I wanted to respond, but my mouth didn't work. I just stared at her, wondering how the hell a man like me, tired, twice divorced, full of doubt, ended up sitting in a room like this, feeling more seen than I ever had. "Why do you say that?" I finally asked. She paused. "Because you listen. You don't try to change everything. You don't try to make me small." I looked down at my hands. "I've made a lot of mistakes. I just don't want to make them again." She nodded slowly, then lay back on the bed, her fingers grazing mine. "Okay," she whispered. "One day at a time." And in that quiet little room, under the slow-turning fan, I realized I wasn't just visiting anymore. I knew the day was coming. My visa was down to 16 days, then 10, then 5. Every night it hung over me like something rotting in the back of the fridge. One evening, as we were eating dinner on the floor, I tried to joke about it. "Guess I'll just have to marry you, huh?" I forced a laugh. She didn't smile. She set her bowl down and looked straight at me. "You don't need marry me for paper." I blinked. "It's just a joke." She didn't move. "I don't want your money. I don't want passport. I want truth." I sat up straighter. "You think I'm doing this for a visa?" She shook her head. "I think you scared. Maybe you leave and never come back." I swallowed hard. "I'm scared," I said, "but not of you. I'm scared of losing this. Losing you." She looked at me in silence. "So why stay?" I leaned forward, elbows on my knees. "Because being here with you feels more honest than anything I've had in years, and not just because it's simple, because you don't lie. You don't need anything from me." She stared at me. "I want you here, but not if your heart is in America." I let out a breath. "My heart hasn't been in America since I met you." The next morning she woke me early. "Wear nice shirt," she said. "Where are we going?" I asked, groggy. "District office." I sat up. "You're serious?" She gave a short nod. "If you want to stay, we do it right." I changed into the same shirt I wore to meet her mother. She tied her hair back in a way I hadn't seen before. Tight, serious, no makeup. At the district office the walls were stained, the air smelled like rubber stamps and sweat. We sat on plastic chairs in silence. When they called us up, she answered all the questions in Thai. I nodded when told, signed where pointed. Then they gave her an ink pad. She pressed her thumb into the red dye and stamped the form. It felt like a ceremony no one else needed to witness. On the walk back, neither of us spoke. I tried holding her hand. She let me. Back at the room, she closed the door softly, kicked off her sandals and sat on the edge of the bed. I stood there like an idiot. She looked up and patted the space beside her. "Sit." I sat. She grabbed my hand and slowly placed it on her chest. "Now your home is here," she whispered. My heart was pounding. Not from lust, not from nerves, from something I couldn't name. I looked around the room. The chipped paint, the small fan rattling in the corner, the smell of garlic from the kitchen downstairs. It wasn't luxury. It wasn't what my friends would call success, but it was real. She didn't need flowers or a ring or an audience. She needed honesty. I gave her a small nod. "Okay," I said. "I'm home." She leaned her forehead against mine and closed her eyes. We didn't speak again that night. We didn't have to. The rains came like punishment. For weeks they didn't let up, just thunder, flooded alleys, water pushing through the cracks in the sidewalk. Nok kept the stall open, but customers barely showed. Some days she sold one bowl, some days nothing. I stood behind her with an umbrella while she stirred the broth like it still mattered. I said, "Let me help with rent this month." She didn't even look at me. "You already gave me enough," I frowned. "I didn't give anything. We're married now." She turned the heat down on the burner. "That's why I don't want it." I didn't know what to do with that. I'd never felt more useless. At least in Chicago, I knew what bills I had to pay. Here, I just watched the woman I loved work herself raw while I stood there with dry hands. One night, she didn't come home. I waited past dark. I checked my phone even though she never texted. When the key finally turned, I stood up fast. "Where were you?" She shook the water from her hair. "I go see cousin." I stared at her. "At this hour?" She kicked off her shoes. "I borrow money." I walked over. "You what?" She pulled off her soaked jacket. "For noodle stock. Tomorrow market open again. I need ingredients." I felt heat rise in my chest. "Why didn't you just tell me?" She looked at me, tired. "Because I know you give. I don't want take." I stood in the middle of the room, fists clenched. I wasn't angry at her. I was angry that she thought she had to carry everything alone. She walked past me, dripping on the floor. "You hungry?" I didn't answer. She opened the fridge, pulled out eggs, garlic, basil. "I make the spicy one you like," she said. I watched her move around the kitchen like nothing had happened. She chopped fast, flipped a wok with one hand, her eyes half closed from exhaustion. I sat down. When she placed the plate in front of me, I whispered, "Thank you." She didn't sit, just leaned against the counter and watched me eat. I tried to think of something to say that wouldn't sound like a lecture or a plea. Nothing came. After I finished, she washed the dish, dried her hands, and turned off the light. We crawled into bed without a word. I lay still. She reached for my hand. "Still here?" she asked softly. I nodded in the dark. "Still here." She squeezed once, then let go. I stared at the ceiling, listening to the rain tap the roof, feeling the questions crawl in. Was this just a hard month? Or was this the beginning of a slide? I didn't want to ask. I didn't want to know. I just wanted one more night with her hand in mine. The office was small, stale, and smelled like wet paper. I handed over my documents to a man who looked half asleep behind a glass partition. He flipped through my passport, barely looking at me. "You married Thai?" he asked, without raising his head. "Yes," I said. "To knock." He turned a page and muttered, "How long?" 4 months, I replied. "We lived together above her noodle stall." That's when he looked up. "You sure she marry you for love?" I blinked. "Excuse me?" He leaned back in his chair. "Many farang come here. Same story. Love, marriage, then problem. Wife disappear. Bank empty. Visa gone." I laughed under my breath. "That's not knock." He nodded like he'd heard it before. "They always say that. Be careful. Thailand very nice, but very sharp." I nodded, gave a dry thanks, and left. I didn't even know what I felt walking back to the stall. Annoyed, defensive, shaken. I kept replaying his words. That night at dinner, I barely touched my bowl. Noak looked at me across the table. "You not eat," she said. "You sick?" I shook my head. "No, just tired." She watched me for a second longer. "You go visa office today?" "Yeah," she said. "All done." She tilted her head. "What they say?" I forced a shrug. "Nothing important. Just same questions." She set her spoon down. "You quiet." I laughed awkwardly. "Just thinking about stuff. It's nothing." She didn't ask again, but her eyes stayed on me longer than usual. After we cleaned up, we got in bed, like always. She curled beside me, but I couldn't sleep. My eyes were open, heart pacing slow and uneasy. I stared at the ceiling fan turning on its lazy axis. I wanted to forget what that man said. I wanted to push it down, bury it deep, pretend it didn't matter. But the doubt was already inside. It had snuck in when I wasn't looking. I turned toward Nock's back and stared at the curve of her shoulder in the dark. I hated myself for thinking maybe, just maybe, he was right. I told her one night, over rice and stir-fried greens. "I need to go back to the States, just for a little while." She didn't stop chewing. She didn't ask why. She just swallowed and said, "Okay, how long?" I hesitated. 3 weeks. I need to clear my head, figure out some things." She nodded and poured more water into my glass. "I'll be here." That was it. No fight, no questions, no guilt. I almost wanted her to protest, to make it harder to leave, but she didn't. The next morning, she helped me fold my shirts. When we got to the road, she kissed my cheek and said, "Don't think too long." I laughed nervously. "I won't." On the flight, I kept replaying her voice. Calm, unbothered, or maybe just brave. My apartment in Chicago felt like a hotel I'd overstayed. I warmed up frozen food and stared at walls that had once felt like mine. I turned on the same shows I used to watch and barely made it through 5 minutes. I scrolled through old photos. Her laughing, her stall, her handwriting on a scrap of receipt paper that read, "Buy onion. I miss things I'd never thought I'd miss." her silence, the smell of broth in her hair, the fan clicking above our bed. One night I ordered noodles from a Thai place down the street. It was bland, sweet in the wrong way. I left it half-eaten and booked a flight that same night. I didn't tell her. I wanted to show up without warning, like something inside me had finally made a decision worth standing on. I landed at noon, grabbed my suitcase, and took a tuk-tuk straight to the alley. Her stall was open. Steam rising, pots bubbling, just like I'd never left. She was pouring broth when I stepped into view. She looked up, blinked once, wiped her hands, and said, "Okay. You hungry?" My throat closed. "Yeah," I said. "Very." She ladled the soup like it was nothing, handed it to me with the same quiet care as the first time. I sat on the red stool and took a bite. It burned my tongue, and I didn't care. I looked at her. "I'm not leaving again." She didn't say anything right away, just turned back to the pot, stirred it slowly, then looked at me. "Okay." That was it. No speech, no tears, just a space for me to return to. She waited. And somehow, that said more than love ever had. It's been 6 months since I came back. Nothing big happened. No romantic getaway, no second honeymoon. Just mornings and noodles. She still wakes before sunrise, still boils the broth slow, still hands me my bowl without asking how I slept. That's how she loves. No fireworks, just presence. One afternoon, while I was fixing a loose leg on the stall's bench, I asked her, "Do you ever think we'll move somewhere else?" She looked at me like I'd asked her to fly. "Let me move," I shrugged. "I don't know, someplace quieter, or bigger." She wiped her hands on a towel. "This not quiet enough?" I smiled. "Quiet's not the problem." She didn't answer. Just walked back to the stall. Later that night I was folding shirts when I asked, "Do you love me?" She didn't look up. "I make you food, yes?" "Yeah." "I stay with you, yes." "Then what more you want?" I laughed, even though I felt it catch in my chest. "Nothing. I just wanted to hear it, I guess." She finally looked over. "We not say love all the time in Thailand. We do it." I sat down beside her. "So you're saying I should shut up and eat more soup?" She grinned. "Yes." I didn't need anything more than that, not anymore. I used to think love was about constant reassurance, grand gestures, making someone say it back just so I could believe it. Now I know better. She shows it in the way she lays my towel out first, in how she sits beside me without words, in how she waited. One night, as the rain started again and she pulled the sheet up over us, I whispered, "I used to think everyone who warned me was right." She didn't respond. I kept going. "They said I'd lose everything, get scammed, that I was a fool for thinking this could be real." She turned slightly, her hand resting over my chest. "So? Did you lose?" I shook my head. "No, I found it." She didn't reply. She didn't need to. Love didn't save me. She did. In her way, quiet, real. And I finally understood. That was forever. We don't have much. A rented room, a single fan, 2 plastic chairs that creak when we sit too long. The noodle stall still makes just enough. Some days more, most days less. But I've never felt richer. She doesn't say, "I love you" out loud, not really. Maybe 3 times in a year, if that. But she brings me mangoes before I ask. She folds my shirts neater than I ever have. She presses her foot against mine under the table when the world is quiet. That's how she says it. I used to wait for the words. Used to think love had to be declared, promised, performed. But here, it's different. It's in the way she sits beside me without needing to fill the silence. It's in the way she knows which mornings I need strong coffee and which nights I need her hand in mine without explanation. One evening I asked her, "Do you still want this life? With me?" She didn't look up from chopping lemongrass. "You still here?" I nodded. "Yeah." "Then I want." That was it. I didn't press. I didn't need more. Everyone told me Thai love was a fantasy, that it wouldn't last, that I was fooling myself, And maybe I was, but maybe it doesn't matter, because every morning she opens the stall, every night she lies beside me. She's still here, and so am I.